This is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. Come along in this video, and we're heading for bear country. So I'll tell you a couple of good bear stories, one now and one at the end of the video. So this guy is biking. He'd biked mountain country and in bear country a lot of times before. And he had his bear spray with him. And he's riding his bike and paying attention to the front wheel. He's working uphill. And he hears a noise and he glances up and here's a big grizzly, full charge right at him. And a grizzly bear can run about the speed of a racehorse. So we're talking seconds. He jams the brakes on his bike. The front wheel stops. The back wheel goes up in the air and somersaults him, tumbles him down on the ground and the bike on top of him. In a second, the big bear is right over him. And he just said that he remembered the smell of that bear, the stink, as the bear was frothing and the spit was coming down in his face. He said that he felt a numbness, started his feet, and worked its way up quickly, up his body, his arms, and he was frozen in time. He thought he was finished, dead. The bear turns around, and away he goes, disappears, back up the trail. Well, the guy wasn't too hurt. He thought about going home, and he thought, you know what? I'll just keep riding. I'm not liable to run into two bears in the same bike ride. So that's what he did. And he said, you know what the strangest part of the story is? The same thing repeated itself exactly. He was looking at his bike. He glanced up. The bear was charging again. Jammed the brakes on, somersaulted, the bike on top of him. Same bear frothing over the top of him. He was frozen in time. Now he was injured this time, bruised up a bit. The bear quickly retreated. Grizzly bears have a characteristic of sometimes, but not always. Sometimes they will do a false charge to scare you. I asked the fella, well, why didn't you use your bear spray? You had it with you. He said, you know, he never thought of the bear spray. He never had time to get it. It was in his belt. It wasn't packed away in his pack, as some people have made the error of doing. But there was no time and no thought of the bear. When that bear charged, the bear spray was far from his mind. So, if you've got bear spray, it's effective, apparently, most of the time. But don't be fooled. Don't get some false security just because you're carrying bear spray. You might not get to use it. We rolled into Canada's second biggest seaport. Prince Rupert is on the coast of northern British Columbia. This is bear country, and we are headed for the Khutzeymateen Grizzly Bear Sanctuary. The wharf in Prince Rupert is not that big, but there were several small eating places and a local co-op artisan store that sold various art things like paintings and sculptures and pottery and photographs and so on. We enjoyed watching the boats like these sailing around the harbor. The port is called Cow Bay because a ship tried to unload some dairy cows here, and I guess it was quite an event. I won't repeat the story here, but I made another travel video on Prince Rupert, and you can find it in the same playlist as where this one was at in British Columbia. This city bus stop was painted the color of a Holstein dairy cow, just to catch the tourist's eye, I guess. I have always been a bear fan, and our house has bear things like these in it. Bears don't make me nervous, but what does make me nervous is riding in a small boat in big water. I was just a little worried about this boat ride up the Pacific coast that we were going on. I looked at several small boats in the harbor, and it made me even more nervous. I asked a fella, which one of these small tubs do we have to take? He said, that yellow one over there. I glanced across the harbor and whoa, the yellow one, unbelievable. It was one of the big yellow beauties over there. I could not believe my eyes. My worries were over. It was a matter of love at first sight. Those white tank-looking things were life rafts. And this is our saddle horse. All we need are some bears. We got our tickets in the office at the dock. It had a few pictures and small souvenirs to buy in it. And then we were ready to walk down the steel plank. And we walked on board. These were some decals on the boat, and they also do tours to watch whales a little later in the year. Inside, the cushioned seats were spacious and comfortable.
Myself, Pam. So any questions or concerns throughout the day, please feel free to ask away. A few housekeeping items before we get on to safety.
The staff, of course, was friendly and, most important, knowledgeable. The lunch that they served was no 8-course meal, but it was tasty and hit the spot. The two 1,600 horsepower diesel engines carried us at about 25 knots, and as you can see, we were sailing right along. The boat had a maximum capacity of 100 passengers. We are looking for bears, but see none. The day tour was about 7-8 hours. Our mind was on bears, but the other sometimes forgotten part of this tour is the fantastic mountain scenery. The BC Pacific Coast is second to none when it comes to unique and beautiful mountain scenery. Just look at this mirror image silhouette picture of the Pacific Coast. Looks like we're coming into bear country now. The tide is out, so that leaves a lot of exposed beach area that contains things like shells and other small sea life that got washed into the area when the tide was in. But now the exposed beach is a dinner table for the bears who can come and grab a tasty snack. Bear, there he is, checking the beach for clams and other things edible. He is paying no attention to us, but don't be fooled. He is fully aware we are here. Grizzlies range in color from brown to cinnamon to black, but you can always tell when it's a grizzly by that big muscle hump on its back. It is a big muscle used for digging for ants and bugs and things like that make up a big part of a grizzly bear's diet. Before we went on this trip, I thought we would see families of bears. You know, Mama Bear, Papa Bear, and Baby Bear. But we saw only solitary males. The females keep their cubs away because if they come around, the males would kill the cubs and breed the females. Cubs normally stay with their mothers for about 2 years, or 3 or 4 years if the mother does not get pregnant. The female does not actually become pregnant until after she fattens up and finds a den to hibernate in for the winter. It's a kind of a safety thing that Mother Nature has figured out. Only then does the fertilized egg attach to her uterus and the pregnancy actually occurs. And the cubs are born then later on in the winter towards springtime, and they come out healthy and ready to go. Bears are carnivorous. That is, they eat meat, and they will kill and eat particularly young fawns and fish, and sometimes even ranchers' calves on rare occasion. They are also herbivorous. That is, they will eat plants, grasses, and roots. If they are both carnivorous and herbivorous, we say that they are omnivorous. That is, they will eat both plants and animals. Being omnivorous, like humans, it provides bears with a broader food base and therefore increases their chances for survival. Out of the hibernation, the bears will eat skunk cabbage. Dandelions are also very nutritious. In the Khutzeymateen, we saw them eating sedge grass. This bear we saw was looking for clams along the beach. But in the background, the green sedge grass is very high protein, up to 25% protein, and makes up about 70% of the bear's diet in early spring. Later in the summer, you can see the lower parts of tree trunks scratched and the earth dug up near old stumps. All evidence the bear was searching for ants and bugs. In early fall, the bears go after berries as they ripen. And finally, they fatten up on the annual salmon run before winter hibernation. And the cycle of life continues. This bear got surprised about us watching him and headed for the forest. We were told by the boat crew as we sailed into the inlet that we tourists needed to respect bear etiquette. Cell phones were to be turned off. Don't slam the boat doors. No talking, not even whispering. Even walk lightly and move slowly. Become as much of the natural environment as possible. Bears must constantly search for food to survive. Generally, they will attack a person only if they are surprised at close quarters, or from self-defense or fear, or you appear to threaten their young, or appear to want to take their kill of an elk or deer. Speaking of bear attack stories, I was over visiting a fella, and he was in his backyard in his garden, and he had his shirt off. The sun was out, and he was getting a little suntan. And I was talking to him about a piece of machinery I wanted to buy from him, and we were negotiating the price. And I noticed that in his on his shoulder there was a circle of little brown marks, about the round little marks about the size of a dime. And I said, if you don't mind me asking, I was wondering, are those birthmarks, or what is that on your shoulder? And he said, no, that's where the big bear, the big grizzly, grabbed me. I said, oh. And he said that he was out hunting with his neighbor and his neighbor's son. And they were going across they were hunting for elk or deer, and they were going across a steep mountain slope, kind of like the one that's behind me. It was even steeper than that, and they had to keep their eyes on the ground and watch where they were going. They were following an animal trail across this steep slope, and their eyes were on the ground. And his neighbor was the first guy in line. They all had their rifles in their hands, and the first guy, the neighbor, heard a noise, and he glanced up just in time to see a big grizzly bear coming full charge, the speed of a racehorse, right at him on the narrow, steep trail. He had a split second to make a decision, and he dove head first down that steep slope, and he rolled and somersaulted into some bushes. Well, the bear kept a-coming, and a half a second later, he was on this fellow that I was talking with, and the big bear grabbed him. And the neighbor's son, who was third in line walking across this steep slope, he said that the big bear grabbed this fella, and like a cat shakes a mouse, he shook the fella. The fella passed out from the pain and the surprise. And suddenly, the bear dropped the guy on the ground, made a turn, and ran back up the trail, over the hill, around the bend and out of sight. Well, they couldn't figure out what happened, but it took them the rest of the day to get back to the hospital, and the guy was badly hurt, bleeding a lot, and he was in the hospital. And the townspeople went up, some of them, the next day to see what had happened about this bear attack. And they figured they saw up the trail a dead deer or elk that the old big grizzly was guarding. And these humans were coming along, intruding on his space. And so he attacked. He was also guarding against 3 other bears. The fella who dove head first down the steep slope and into the bushes, he rolled into the bushes at the feet of 3 grizzly bears standing in that bush. The bears were surprised, startled, and they just backed right away and got out of there, away from that human as quick as they could. Now the big grizzly, they figured, was guarding his kill against the human intruders and against those 3 younger, smaller grizzly bears ready to take a piece of his kill. So, but the story doesn't end there. This story went all around town, and the newspapers heard about it, and phone calls were made, and the national media network, one of them in the East, in either Montreal or Toronto, heard about this, and the manager said, you know, this is a great story, we got to get it first. I'm sending 2 guys out to Vancouver, and you get that story from British Columbia. Well, the 2 guys came out. They flew out, landed in Vancouver. But the Vancouver people said, well, you know, this bear attack happened on the far side of the province, back near Alberta. So it's going to take us a day to line up a rent-a-car and to drive out there. So these 2 fellas checked with their manager back east, and the manager said, you know, we don't have time for that. This story is going to slip away from us. So you make a phone call to that hospital where he's in, get all of the details and the information, and then one of you get in a bed in Vancouver there, and one role play the guy attacked, and the other guy is the interviewer, and we'll put it on the air that way. And that's what they did. And so when this fella I was talking with was telling me this story, he couldn't say hardly a word after another without swearing about the media and the lengths that they would go to just to get a story. And, you know, it just goes to show you, though, with this story, that the truth is sometimes stranger than fiction. The Eagles knew we were returning to the port at Prince Rupert, and they were ready. The crew tossed out some meat pieces, and the Eagles put on an aerial show. It was a nice wrap-up to a great tour. If you hit the subscribe button, that helps us with this channel on YouTube, and it'll tell you when we're posting more videos. So, neighbor, I made a couple of more videos where I told some bear stories in those videos, and those are videos in the British Columbia playlist, the same as this video, and they're videos, a couple of them on the Yellowhead Highway, and we went into Prince Rupert and Khutzeymateen in those videos, and I told some bear stories in those 2 videos. So until then, we'll see you down the road. We're rolling. This is I Go Travel with Don Barnett. You can find any of my travel videos, as it says in the bottom of the card. Just Google, start with the little @ sign, @Don Barnett 5090. That's my YouTube address. And then when you're there, click on my name and hit the playlists and scroll down. I've got about 15 playlists with half a dozen to a dozen or more videos in each playlist.